Hi girls, Miss Gaska here. Today I'm going over 8th grade, week 2, activity 4.5, Finding Truth in Comedy. Our learning targets for this activity are to collaborate to analyze a humorous essay in a Socratic seminar, and to write to explain how an author conveys universal truths through humor. So, to preview, in this activity, we're going to be reading a humorous essay and thinking about how people use comedy to discuss serious or important topics. So, setting a purpose for reading. This is a really important part because it's going to tell us what we need to be looking for and how to mark our text. So as you read the essay, underline words and phrases that are intended to be humorous, all right? So words and phrases intended to be humorous. We're also going to circle unknown words and phrases and try to determine the meaning of those words by using context clues, word parts, or a dictionary. Last but not least, we're going to put an exclamation point by text that deals with the universal truth. So something that kind of applies no matter what the situation is, or no matter what. I'm going to okay, never mind. So this story is called I've Got a Few Pet Peeves About Sea Creatures. Alright, that seems like a weird thing to have a pet peeve about, so I'm already kind of curious about it based on the title. So I'm only going to read a little bit of this with you to demonstrate how to annotate, but the rest of it is up to you. So, 1. Pets are good because they teach children important lessons about life, the main one being that sooner or later, life kicks the bucket. Oh dang. So already we have an exclamation point to add because we have this universal truth. Like no matter what, life kicks the bucket, meaning like everything dies at some point. I think that his use of the phrase kicks the bucket is an attempt at humor by making it kind of less serious when a pet dies. And I think that him calling it life instead of like animals kick the bucket also kind of is his attempt to use humor. So with me, it was sooner. When I was a boy, my dad, who worked in New York City, would periodically bring home a turtle in a little plastic tank that had a little plastic island with a little plastic palm tree, as is so often found in natural turtle habitats. I was excited about having a pet, and I'd give the turtle a fun pet name like Scooter. But my excitement was not shared by Scooter, who, despite residing in a tropical paradise, never did anything except mope around. So here I see a few more examples of the author using comedy. So he talks about the little plastic everything, and he repeats the phrase little plastic to emphasize. He's using parallel structure here when he repeats little plastic 3 times. And then he contrasts that with, as is so often found in natural turtle habitats. That's the author using sarcasm. Of course you don't find plastic trees and plastic tanks and plastic islands in natural habitats. So that's the author using sarcasm. And then here, he said my excitement was not shared by Scooter. So that's also an attempt at using humor by comparing how a child feels to how a turtle probably feels. And then he calls the tank a tropical paradise, which is also kind of funny because it's just a little plastic tank. And then says that the turtle didn't do anything except for mope around. Which, how can you really tell if a turtle is moping or not? It's a turtle. So I don't really see any life lessons here, but I don't know if you guys know the word periodically, so I'm going to circle that. And then I don't know if you guys know the word residing, so I'm going to circle that too, but you guys could probably figure out what that means fairly easily. So I want you to continue on finding generalizations, life lessons, also things that are meant to be comedic, and also unknown words and phrases. And then meet me down here for the questions. So our first question says, what is the effect of the repetition of a little plastic in paragraph 2? Well, we just talked about that a little bit. It's meant for comedic effect. So you want to describe what happens there and what effect it has. And then for number 2, it says, what is the effect of the juxtaposed ideas grown bigger and grown smaller in paragraph 4? You may not know what the word juxtapose means, but basically it means when you have 2 ideas that are next to each other that contrast each other, meaning like they're completely different, they're opposites. So when you stick those 2 images together, usually it's trying to create some kind of an effect that makes one or the other stand out because of what it's put next to. So you're looking for what effect that those particular ideas have when put together. Craft and structure. What is the impact of the phrase little pooping torsos in paragraph 5? So you're going to be going back to paragraph 5 and looking for the phrase little pooping torsos and then explain how it impacts the text. Number 4, what specific details does the author include in paragraph 7 in order to have a comedic effect? So you're going to go to paragraph 7 and find the different details that they include that are meant to be funny. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are funny to you or to me or to anybody else, but that are meant to be funny. So now we have a quote here, and it wants us to read and respond to it. So I'm going to show you how I would do this, because this is kind of like a double entry diary, double entry journal. And I really like using these because it can be really helpful to track our ideas and our responses to text. So I want to demonstrate how to do this, so I'm going to do this one with you. The power of comedy is to make people laugh, and when they have their mouths open and they least expect it, you slip in the truth. So what he's trying to say, the interpretation is, comedy is based on the truth, but told in a funny way to make people laugh. When you listen to stand-up comedy, one of the reasons that it's so funny is they're talking about real situations, but they're talking about it in a way that is humorous. There's actually a comedian that I highly recommend. She has a stand-up on Netflix called Nanette. And she talks about comedy, and she talks about how basically it's the process of giving your audience tension, meaning like making them stressed, and then providing relief with the laugh, with the punchline, all right? So my personal commentary, well, I just kind of made it. I don't know why it does that sometimes. This quote reminded me of the stand-up Nanette on Netflix, where the comedian talks about giving truth through comedy by creating stress or tension for the audience and then providing relief through a sudden punchline that they weren't expecting. So I highly recommend watching that if you want to know anything about comedy or how to be funny, because she gives a really good explanation of the process of creating comedy. Although I will also warn you that parts of that stand-up are surprisingly depressing. So, beware of that. Part of it might be a little bit triggering to some people. So for number 6, it says, how would you classify this essay, high or low comedy? Explain. So you might want to go back to your earlier exercises where it talked about the difference between high or low comedy, and then figure out which one you think it qualifies as, and then explain why you think it qualifies as that. For number 7, it says, how would you describe the humor? What is the author's intended response? And then use precise diction in your response. So diction meaning word choice, keep that in mind. We're looking for how would we describe the humor that the author is trying to use, like how would we describe that? And then what did the author intend for us to get from this essay? For number 8, how does the author use language such as diction, syntax, and imagery to create a humorous tone? So I want you to find at least one example for each of those. Diction being word choice, syntax being sentence structure, and imagery being like the author creating an image with their words using figurative language or sensory details. So try to find one example of each of those 3 things that show the author creating a humorous tone. Then for number 9, how does the author appeal to the audience's emotions, interests, values, and or beliefs? So you're going to be looking for parts of the speech or essay where the author is trying to appeal to your emotions, where they're trying to appeal to your interests, where they're trying to appeal to your values, and where they're trying to appeal to your beliefs. So values is basically like the things that you believe in, like the things that you think are right and wrong, because I thought that one might not be necessarily clear to you. So think about how the author is reaching out to try to appeal to each of those things. What is the universal truth or theme of the text? So the theme is like the overall message that the text is trying to tell you, the universal truth that it wants to share with you. How does the author develop that idea through humorous characters and plot? So basically, how do they teach you that truth using humorous characters and plot? Number 11 says, develop levels of questions based on your analysis to prepare for a Socratic seminar discussion. Remember to maintain a formal style in your speaking during the Socratic seminar. Be sure to use precise verbs such as communicates, creates, emphasizes, or illustrates when discussing the author's purpose. Use the author's last name. Barry creates humor by, and then cite textual evidence to support your opinion. So you're coming up with 3 levels of questions. Level 1, literal. This means a very simple question that could be answered in just one statement. So, who is the author's name? So you would describe who he is. He's a comedian who blah, 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 blah. Level 2 is interpretive, meaning there's a little bit more thinking that needs to go on. So what does this comedian have in common with some other comedian that you want to use? That would be an example of interpretive, because you have to interpret what the two share and think about how they can interact with one another. And then level 3 is universal or thematic. So that would be something that can apply to everything. So what is one goal of all comedians as pertains to their audience, or something like that? What is the benefit of comedy in society? Things like that. Those are universal type of questions. So you're coming up with one of each type of these based on what you just read from this author. Then brainstorm any other precise ideas that'll help or precise verbs that will help in your discussion. Do you have any other tips for using formal language? If you do, write them here. And use your analysis and questions to engage in the Socratic seminar. I'm going to try to figure out a way to do that online, but I'm not 100% sure how to do it, so this may or may not be something that we get to accomplish. But like I said, I am going to try to figure that out. And then, writing to sources, explanatory text. Write a paragraph that explains how Barry uses comedy to convey a truth about life. Be sure to establish a clear, controlling idea about conveying a truth, cite specific evidence from the text, use precise diction to describe humorous effects, and use verb tenses correctly and consistently. So that is all for Activity 4.5. I hope that this has been informative for you, and if you have any questions remaining, feel free to reach out and I'd be glad to assist you with that. Thanks for watching, and take care.